TV producer told James Brown, "You're too black for primetime television. Your music is too aggressive. Your performance too sexual. Your blackness too threatening for white audiences." Brown's response got him banned from the network for 2 years. But what he said in that moment changed television forever and proved that sometimes getting banned is more powerful than getting booked. It was March 1965, and James Brown was sitting in a conference room at one of the major television networks in New York City. At 31 years old, he was one of the hottest acts in music. Papa's Got a Brand New Bag was about to explode. His live shows were legendary, and he was crossing over from the Chitlin circuit to mainstream success. But there was one frontier he hadn't conquered yet. The meeting had been set up by his manager, who'd convinced the network that Brown was the future of American music, that putting him on their variety show would be groundbreaking, revolutionary. The producer, a middle-aged white man named Richard Feldman, had agreed to meet. He'd even come to see one of Brown's shows at the Apollo, seen the energy, the excitement, the way Brown commanded a stage. Now they were sitting across from each other in a sterile conference room with a view of Manhattan, about to discuss what should have been a straightforward booking. But the conversation was about to go somewhere neither man expected. "Mr. Brown," Feldman began, shuffling papers nervously, "there's no question that you're incredibly talented. What you do on stage is remarkable. The energy, the showmanship, it's unlike anything we've seen." Brown nodded, waiting. He'd learned over the years that compliments from white executives usually came with a "but" attached. "But," Feldman continued, "right on schedule. We have some concerns about how you translate to television, specifically to primetime television." "What kind of concerns?" Brown asked, his voice calm, but his eyes sharp. Feldman shifted in his seat. "Well, our audience is primarily middle America, families, conservative viewers, and your performance style is very intense, very physical, very—" he trailed off, searching for the word. "Very what?" Brown prompted. Feldman took a breath. "Very black, Mr. Brown. Your music is too aggressive, your performance too sexual, your whole presentation too threatening for white audiences. I'm not saying this to be offensive. I'm being honest about the reality of television in 1965. The room went very quiet. Brown's manager started to say something, but Brown held up his hand, stopping him. "Let me make sure I understand you correctly," Brown said, his voice still calm, but with an edge now. "You're saying I'm too black for your show?" "I'm saying your blackness is very pronounced," Feldman said, trying to soften it. "And that makes our advertisers nervous. It makes our audience nervous. We need someone who can appeal to the broadest possible demographic." "You mean someone who seems less black," Brown said flatly. "I mean someone who's more palatable to mainstream audiences." "And by mainstream, you mean white." Feldman's face reddened. "Mr. Brown, I'm trying to be honest with you about the business realities." "No," Brown interrupted, his voice rising slightly. "You're trying to tell me that who I am, what I look like, how I move, how I perform, all of that is too much blackness for white people to handle. That's what you're saying. Let's not dress it up in business language. I'm saying that television has certain standards that were set by white people, for white people, to make white people comfortable," Brown finished. "I know exactly what standards you're talking about." Feldman looked frustrated. "Mr. Brown, if you want to be on television, you have to understand that there are compromises that need to be made. Look at Nat King Cole. He had a television show. Look at Sammy Davis Jr. He's on TV all the time. They understand how to present themselves in a way that works for the medium." Brown leaned forward. "Nat King Cole's show got canceled because sponsors wouldn't support a black man in prime time. And Sammy Davis Jr. has to tap dance and grin and make white audiences feel safe. That's the compromise you're talking about. You want me to be a non-threatening Negro, a safe black man, someone who makes white people comfortable instead of confronted." "I want you to be professional," Feldman shot back. I want you to understand that television is different from a nightclub. You can't gyrate and scream and sweat all over the place. You have to tone it down, be more controlled, more appropriate. More white, Brown said. You didn't have to. Appropriate means white. Professional means white. Palatable means white. You're asking me to strip away everything that makes me who I am, everything that makes my performance powerful, everything that's authentic about my artistry, so that white people won't have to confront the reality of black excellence, black sexuality, black power. Feldman's jaw tightened. Mr. Brown, I'm trying to give you an opportunity here, an opportunity that most Negro performers would kill for, but you're making this into something it's not. I'm making this into exactly what it is, Brown replied. You want access to my talent, my innovation, my audience, but you want it sanitized. You want black music without black culture. You want the rhythm without the reality. You want the profits without the power. That's not fair. What's not fair, Brown said, his voice getting louder now, is you sitting there telling me that my blackness is a problem that needs to be solved. What's not fair is a system where I have to make myself smaller, quieter, less threatening, less sexual, less black, just so white audiences can enjoy my music without having to acknowledge that it comes from a black experience, a black body, a black reality that makes them uncomfortable. Brown's manager tried to intervene. James, maybe we can find some middle ground. There is no middle ground, Brown said, not taking his eyes off Feldman. Either I'm acceptable as I am, or I'm not, and it sounds like I'm not. Feldman leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. Mr. Brown, I understand you're passionate about this, but the reality is that if you can't adapt to the medium, you won't succeed in it. Other artists have figured this out. They've found ways to cross over without alienating audiences. You mean they found ways to cross over without threatening white supremacy, Brown said. They found ways to be black without being too black, to be talented without being too powerful, to entertain without being too authentic. That's an unfair characterization of what I'm saying. Then tell me what you are saying, in plain language. What exactly do you want me to change about myself to be acceptable for your show? Feldman hesitated, then spoke carefully. I want you to be less physical, less sexual, less aggressive in your performance style. I want you to smile more, engage with the audience more warmly, make people feel comfortable instead of confronted. I want you to dress more conservatively, move more conservatively, sing more conservatively. You want me to be someone I'm not. I want you to be professional enough to adjust your performance for the medium. Brown stood up slowly. Let me tell you something, Mr. Feldman. What you call too aggressive is black energy. What you call too sexual is black freedom. What you call too threatening is black power. You're not asking me to adjust my performance for television. You're asking me to adjust my blackness for white comfort. And I won't do it. Then you won't be on our show, Feldman said, standing as well. I know, Brown replied. And you know what? I'm fine with that. Because I'd rather be banned from your network for being too black than celebrated on it for being black enough. I'd rather keep my integrity and my authenticity than trade them for access to an audience that doesn't want to see the real me anyway. You're making a mistake, Feldman said. Television is the future. If you're not on TV, you're limiting your career. If being on TV means erasing who I am, then my career doesn't need TV. My people will find me, black audiences will support me, and eventually, white audiences will have to decide if they want real black artistry, or if they just want minstrelsy in a modern package. Brown headed for the door, his manager scrambling to follow. Mr. Brown, Feldman called out, you're going to regret this decision. Brown turned back. The only thing I'd regret is looking in the mirror and seeing someone who sold his soul for a TV appearance. You can keep your network. I'll keep my dignity. He walked out, and as promised, he was effectively banned from that network for the next 2 years. Other networks heard about the confrontation and became wary of booking him. His television appearances were limited to shows willing to let him be himself. Mostly black-oriented programming and a few brave variety show hosts who understood what he was fighting for. But something interesting happened during those 2 years. Brown's live performances became even more powerful, even more unapologetically black. He leaned into everything Feldman had called too much: the physicality, the sexuality, the raw black energy. Black audiences supported him fiercely, understanding that he'd stood up for them, for their culture, for their right to be seen as they were, rather than as white comfort demanded. And slowly, grudgingly, white audiences started coming too. Not the ones who wanted a safe, sanitized version of black music, but the ones who were ready to be confronted, challenged, excited by authentic black artistry. By 1968, television had changed. The civil rights movement had shifted the culture. Audiences were demanding more authentic representation, and suddenly, what Feldman had called too black became exactly what television needed to stay relevant. Brown was invited back, not by Feldman's network, but by competitors who understood that the future of television was integration, authenticity, real representation, rather than sanitized performance. When Brown finally appeared on primetime TV, he didn't compromise a thing. He was exactly as physical, as sexual, as powerful, as black as he'd always been. And white audiences loved it, because he'd been right. They didn't want fake. They wanted real. They just needed time to catch up to where he'd already been. Years later, a young television executive interviewed Brown about that meeting with Feldman. "Do you regret walking out?" the executive asked. Brown laughed. "Regret? That was one of the best decisions I ever made. Because if I'd compromised then, if I'd made myself smaller to fit their comfort, I would have set a precedent. Every black artist coming after me would have been expected to do the same thing. But because I said no, because I walked out, I proved that we don't have to erase ourselves to deserve a platform." "But it cost you 2 years of television exposure," the executive pointed out. "It cost me 2 years of being on a medium that didn't respect me," Brown corrected. "And it bought me a lifetime of being able to look myself in the mirror and know I never betrayed who I was. That's a trade I'd make again in a heartbeat." The lesson from that conference room in 1965 isn't just about James Brown standing up to racism, though that's certainly part of it. It's about understanding that sometimes the most powerful response to discrimination is refusal. Refusal to compromise. Refusal to make yourself smaller. Refusal to trade authenticity for access. Feldman wanted to put James Brown on television, but only a version of James Brown that didn't threaten white supremacy. Brown understood that accepting those turns wouldn't just diminish him, it would diminish every black artist trying to be authentic in a system designed to sanitize them. So he walked out. He chose dignity over opportunity. He chose integrity over access. And in doing so, he changed what was possible for everyone who came after him. If this story about standing up to discrimination, refusing to compromise your identity, and understanding that sometimes getting banned is more powerful than getting booked, moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear that authenticity is worth more than access. Subscribe for more stories about legends who chose dignity over opportunity. And remember, you don't have to make yourself smaller so others can feel more comfortable. Sometimes the most revolutionary act is simply being yourself, unapologetically and completely.